From dream to reality, this is part 2 of your step-by-step guide to successfully launching your own gym business. So in this video, guys, here, we're going to expand on video number 1, which we began talking about competitive analysis and opening the perfect location and demographics and, assessing things like location, foot traffic, online, local search, big brands in the area, using what we call the Burger King strategy. And available market share. In today's video, we're going to expand on that by talking about defining your business model. So after you've done your market research, which you at this point have not had necessarily to have signed a lease, right? In fact, you probably shouldn't sign a lease at this point. At this point, what you're doing is you've decided where you're going to open the gym, right? You've found the place that has ideal demographics, the people in the area income-wise can support it. There's demand. Online, locally, there's opportunity to insert yourself competitively in local search results. And there's this opportunity there, and there's a way to differentiate yourself in that market. Okay, so that's where you should be sitting at this point. Now, what's very important is you define your business model. So in this video here, we'll talk a little bit more about locations and facilities, but we're going to get into defining your business model and really thinking through that, what's called your unique selling proposition, and clearly articulating your gym's mission and vision. Right, at the end of the day, a business is really going to come down to the collection of people that run it down the road when it's at scale. Like when any business gets to scale, it's really about people and who you have on the team. And a lot of people start a business and don't think about that. They just think, I don't want to work for someone else. I want to, I'm coaching at a gym now, or like maybe I'm an athlete at a gym now, or whatever the case may be, and I'm interested in running my own business. And at first, the idea of coaching all the, opening this business, having your own little slice of heaven, and you're the one being the provider, and everybody's coming to you, and you're the person on the pedestal being the the expert. It's an amazing feeling in the first year or two. But what I'll tell you after having run several businesses now over most of my adult life, I started my first businesses when I moved west when I was 20 years old, and every business I've started along the way had that novelty at the beginning of like, it's, I'm excited to provide this to people. I'm excited to be the expert. And I really like that self-employed feeling. And they talk about this in the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and that like being self-employed, it can be a trap, that novelty, that exciting novelty of being the provider, being the person that cranks the wrenches or coaches the classes or makes the pizzas. It's a craft, right? And we care about that craft. But after a business starts to hit a certain amount of scale and has a certain number of customers you're trying to take care of, it becomes rather demanding and very difficult. And you want to be able to bring on people on the team. And a lot of business owners, when they're ready to bring people on the team, they really don't know what to do because they themselves have no established vision and mission in regards to how they're going to build a team and how the business is going to operate when that day comes. So you just want to think about these things at this stage. You don't need to know who you're going to hire or exactly how many people you're going to need to hire, but you should be thinking about how you can clearly articulate your gym's mission and vision, right? And you should determine your unique selling proposition, what's called a USP, and it's going to be what sets your gym apart, right? And a well-defined USP, if we're looking at it right here, is going to include these things. What makes your business different or special? And if you're following along with me and you're doing homework on this stuff as we're doing these videos, you should have a piece of paper out right now or a notepad or a Google Drive or Google Doc or something out, and you're writing these things down. What makes the business different or special, right? And, and when you look around the market, how can you separate yourself and how will people look at that and be excited? And then how does it solve a customer's problem and fulfill a need, right? If we don't clearly understand the problem, when we go to talk about our business, people are not going to understand what we're selling them, right? They might say, oh, it's fitness, but there's a lot of fitness in the area and you can't clearly articulate the problem. They're not going to assume you know how to solve anything, right? They're just going to assume that you want to sell them fitness because you think you have the best fitness, right? And you might get a few people that like you personally and your persona, and maybe you have a little bit of like an influential personality or you're persuasive and people are attracted to that. And you might be able to draw people in with that, but I know a lot of gym owners with that ability that have an influential or persuasive style, and they are an attractive person that brings a lot of people in. They can get their businesses on that alone to a break even, but they often won't really be able to scale the business on that, right? In order to scale sales and marketing, you have to have a very clearly defined USP, which includes things like how you differentiate yourself and how you talk about the problem. And what you'll find in sales and marketing is that talking about the problem alone will bring people to you, because if you talk about the problem, they naturally assume that you have an answer for it coming, right? And a lot of gym owners don't really know what the problem is that they're solving. They just think, oh, we do fitness, and they'll say things very generic like we help people lose weight or whatever the case may be, but it's the way you talk about that problem that really keeps you from getting lost in the weeds, right? And a good example of a good USP could be our CrossFit gym offers personalized training programs tailored to each individual's needs, providing a supportive community and expert coaching to help clients achieve their highest potential. Now, that's obviously an example one. I actually used AI to generate that one because I was like, let's see what it comes up with. And, you may not do tailored individual programmings, and often CrossFit gyms don't. A lot of times CrossFit gyms aren't doing personal training, they're doing group training. So, right? So you might want to talk about how, training with a community and like-minded people and working together to complete a workout to each person's individual abilities and making it infinitely scalable for all levels. And you want to avoid jargon, right? I just said some jargon there. Infinitely scalable, right? People, that's a really techie word, right? Like someone's not going to know what that word means. So in your USP, you want to avoid jargon, right? You don't want to say things like high intensity functional fitness, done across broad time and modal domains, right? Something like that is very, very, that's something that someone who might be like an innovator type of personality might find attractive. But the mainstream, which right now, as of this video is recording in 2023 and beyond, group fitness methodologies are, we're well past the 2005 to 2010 area of 2010 area of like your innovators and your first movers. It's now very mainstream, right? It's now very mainstream. So like you want to talk in a way like the average person can understand it, right? Like, the best way to think about your USP is like, how can you say this really nerdy thing in a way that speaks to so a fifth grader can understand it, right? And if you need some help with that, you could actually use something like ChatGPT, and you could say like, hey, this is my really nerdy understanding of it. Can you give me a version of this that a fifth grader could understand? And you will start to get some ideas of how you could say that better, right? Now you're going to want to stop. You're going to want to decide on the type of services you will offer, and some of you might already know, right? Like if someone like me who fell in love with CrossFit and it's CrossFit's a methodology that you want to sell, then you're going to want to write that down. You're going to say, we offer CrossFit. Here's what CrossFit is. And you're going to want to write down your classes. If you're going to offer personal training as an upsell or a cross-sell there outside of your group classes. If you're going to do nutrition as an upsell, and a little bit of guidance here. I would say when you start a business, you generally want to go deep on one core offering before you focus on going wide with several offerings, right? You don't want to, what a lot of gym owners will do when they first open or in their plan is they'll say, we're going to offer classes, but then when I'm not running classes, I'm going to be doing personal training. And then when I'm not doing personal training, I'm going to be doing nutritional guidance. And what'll happen is they'll make themselves so busy during all hours of the day selling all the, fulfilling on all these different things that they've sold to a few people that they never have enough free time to really help promote and market and push the core product, the class, the most scalable thing, which for a group gym is going to be group classes, right? That's where you can, a gym that has 3,000 to 5,000 square feet, which is going to be your ideal size for a group fitness gym. You can run 200 to 300 people through that gym running 50 or so group classes per week at peak hours, 7-8 classes per day, 5-6 days a week. Now, the doing that requires you use what free time you have to promote and sell and follow up and get people in the door for that core program and be using that time to sell. But a lot of gym owners will get so busy coaching all the classes, they'll at the beginning they have free time, so they'll sell classes, but then they'll also use the free time they have to sell what free hours they have to do personal training, and then they'll use what other free hours they have to sell and do nutrition guidance. And then what happens is the business owner is literally just fulfilling on all the products and working in the business, and then they're not having time to work on the business, right? So I generally recommend, and this is totally up to you, if you want to do all that, that's totally fine. But you're going to have a lot more success if you focus on selling one thing really, really well, right? When Amazon started as a business, they sold books. They were a bookstore. They wanted to be the world's online bookstore because there wasn't one at the time. So they became the best bookstore ever. And then through the framework of selling books, they figured out how to sell other things through the same channels, right? So you want to think about that the same way. Be Amazon. Don't try to be one of these companies that sells, 50 different things equally at the beginning. Identify your pricing strategy and membership costs and your potential discounts. So, you're going to want to find out, where you want to price things. And what I recommend you don't do is don't necessarily look at your market for pricing, right? Because a lot of gyms, especially if they're independent gyms, like if you are a CrossFit gym and you look at other CrossFit gyms, a lot of times they're underpriced. And you want to look at probably like the bigger players in the market, the bigger brands like an Orange Theory or an F45 to see what they're pricing their services at, because they've done the market research across hundreds of markets to find out what people will pay for a high quality fitness service. And you'll find it's often much, much higher than like the independent group fitness gym is charging. And that's because the independent group fitness gym is run by a person who only has one location, and they're often operating in a scarcity mindset. You got to understand that most of the gyms you're going to be competing against don't make any money. Probably 80% of the gyms out there you see, independent gyms, don't make enough. They don't make enough money for the owner to solely work on the business. They're often, if a gym owner is making money, it's often because they're working in jobs in the business that they should be hiring out for. And if they were to hire out, they wouldn't make any money, right? So, in my opinion, that's someone that has a job. They don't really own a business. So you really shouldn't try to copy people who aren't business owners and who are just self-employed people. You should try to copy the business owners, right? And because ideally, you want to start selling your product for what it's worth and get good at selling it at that price versus trying to use price to try to sell people, because you will convince yourself that your product is only worth that lower price if you stick to it. And I would say for most group gyms, you're somewhere in the $150 to $250 a month range. There are certainly gyms that can be lower than that, and there are certainly gyms that can be higher than that. But that seems to be the pocket of where most group fitness gyms, especially CrossFit gyms, sit. We've seen those prices come up quite a bit in the last couple of years. And I'll tell you, we've had gyms that have been in business for a decade that were underpriced, that raised their prices. And it almost blows over without there ever being any issues or shakeups when they go to announce a price for hike. People will pay a lot more than you think. And often in our minds, especially, what people get trapped in is if you're a coach and you've been coaching at a gym and getting fitness for free for a long time, or if you've never paid full price for fitness because you're someone that started at a gym that was cheaper or that was a discount gym, or you came on discount offers, or if you had some sort of deal it worked out in exchange for coaching at a business prior, what we find is the way people buy is the way people sell, right? So we often, if we've had a certain experience in paying for something, we will often only value it the same way we valued it, right? So we might have to we may have to step outside of that and get uncomfortable and say, how I bought something and how people are going to buy something from me is not the same way that I bought things. And this is also why the best buyers are the best sellers, right? I often find that the people that have the most success selling things are the people that pay full price for things and aren't cheap about things and aren't undervaluing things, right? They often have the ability to sell their own thing at a premium price because they understand how value is demonstrated. And value isn't demonstrated based on price. Value is demonstrated based on results and the multiplier of the experience over what it cost, right? So something could cost more and have an even bigger delivery on service than something that costs less and is being under-delivered on service, right? It just depends on how you want to position yourself in the market. So you want to identify your pricing strategy, and you want to get a pen and paper out, right, and write this down and figure out, is it going to be month to month? Is it going to be, are we going to make contracted terms available? Are we going to, I'll just pull an example up here from our trainings here in Big Little Gyms that we give our gym owners. You just pull this up. We go into our platform here, and I pull up our classroom trainings, and I go to our pro group trainings. And I go down to, let's see here. Gotta find it here. Pricing, it's somewhere in here. Just gotta find it. Bear with me here, guys. Let's type in pricing. See if we can find it. Pricing, there it is. Pricing menus and membership. So we have here, our. We give all our clients access to this, and it is a membership menu, an example that you can use to set your pricing, right? So we recommend something like this when you sit down, and you don't have to have the exact numbers, but you should find out ballpark what you're going to price your service at. You want to go as far as figuring out, are we going to offer a term agreement, right? So we used to offer unlimited classes at $195 a month, and this was a couple years ago when we made this. We probably would charge more now. We charged an on-ramp up front in the first month that included 3 semi-private training sessions, a meal plan, a body scan, and a private assessment, with the remainder of that month of classes included. So they paid $249, and we showed them the value. This was over $600. So they're getting a bundle of things, personal training sessions, and we gave them to them so they can get up to speed on the movements we're going to do in CrossFit. And then they would continue at a month-to-month rate of $195. Now, if the client decided to sign up for a 6-month agreement, we would drop the price to $175, and if they went to 12-month, they would go to $165. Now, our goal was to sell this, the 6-month agreement. Now, you can decide, like, hey, we don't want to offer contracts, and that's okay. And you might think that, like, contracts are a bad thing or whatever because maybe how you paid for something. Again, you project on the people what you tend to have experienced, right? Now, we found that people, the 6-month was the sweet spot for us because they were often going to pay for 6 months anyways. 12 months, we didn't really want to sell them because sometimes people would move and then they would, get out of their 12-month agreement. And we weren't interested in actually going to collections or, like, pursuing these people. We just wanted them to commit to long enough of a term. We didn't tell them this. We would put in the terms that this could go to collections, all that stuff, but we would never pursue it because it wasn't worth our time, to be honest with you. We knew that if they signed a 6-month agreement, that 98% of the time they would see it through. And we kept the data on that over several years. And we found that 6 months was the sweet spot. So we priced 6 months. That way, like, you know, we got them over that hump of committing to that first 90 or so days that people kind of flounder with things, right? So we priced with the biggest drop in price being $20 if they sign up for a 6-month agreement. If they dropped to 12, if they went to 12 months, it only saved another $10. So most people would just go 6 months at a time, and that was great because we got that sweet spot, and we priced our pricing at the 6-month option, right? So we wanted $175 a month at the time, and rather than making our month-to-month $175 and then dropping the price for 6 months, we just made the 6 month the $175, and we marked up the month-to-month, and that basically pushed people towards the option that we wanted them to buy, which is this 6 months at $175. And the rare occasion, the 1 or 2% of members that, you know, ghosted us on their agreement and canceled their card, it was so small that it didn't really matter to us. And we were getting the same price we wanted out of a month-to-month anyways at 6 months. So it's just pricing psychology. So you're going to want to think about these things and how you're going to price and your pricing model is going to be from there. Now, as far as location, facilities, and what you're going to actually want in your space, you know, we found that you're going to want to find a space that you can expand into. It's going to want to be a suitable location with sufficient space for activities and equipment, right? And the biggest mistake gyms will make is to open in a space that they can't expand, or it's not enough space, right? So you have to do your math on like how many clients you're going to serve and at what price, and find out like scalability wise, can I make enough money doing this, right? If you can only serve 100 clients at say $200 a month, that's $20,000, right? That's great. Now that means you have to have a space where you can serve 100 clients, right? Now I found that the usability, what's the word I'm looking for here? The rate at which clients use the rate at which your population of members uses your facility for a group gym. So you have a really good community where they show up a lot. You know, in our case, we had a CrossFit gym. We found that on the peak days, it was somewhere between 80% of our total clients would use the gym, right? They would show up for a class like a Monday, right? On a Monday, we'd have about 70% of our clients use the space. So if we had 200 members, that means we needed space and class times to support 140 people that day to attend class. And then we found that on the off days, like a Tuesday or a Thursday or, you know, a Saturday sometimes, we'd only get about a 50% utilization rate. That's the word I was looking for, utilization, right? So you want to probably, you know, if you run a good tight gym where people are showing up 3 days a week, minimum 3 to 5 days a week, you're going to want a space that can serve about 70% of your total member base that you need to support your financial goals, right? And we found the sweet spot for most gyms is somewhere in the 3,000 to 4,000 neighborhood, 3,000 to 4,000 square feet. You can run a 150 member CrossFit gym, functional fitness gym, group training gym that serves, you know, classes of 15 to 30 people at its peak hours, and have a 150 member gym, which at a 150 member gym, economically, you can make $100K a year running a gym if you're charging, say, you know, and it of course depends on your market, what you're charging, and of course, what rent and overheads are in your area. But in most markets of the world, that's very, very feasible, right? And the biggest thing you want to make sure you have is a space you can expand into, right? I would, what I did in the past in our gyms is we always chose spaces where we had first right of refusal on the neighboring units. If, say, the landlord had interest in the neighboring unit, they had to go through us first, and that was written into our lease. So we would tell the landlord, like, hey, that neighboring space there, we want that space first. So if someone else shows interest in that space, we want the right to take that lease first. So if, you know, someone was moving in next door, the landlord would then come to us and say, hey, we have interest. You guys have first right of refusal. If you guys decline, we're going to rent it to them. And we would say, and what we did one point is we saw the neighboring space come available because it wasn't available. When we actually told them, like, hey, that space is not available now, but when it comes available, we want it. And if we don't take it, and if we aren't ready for it, we want first right of refusal. So when the neighboring unit did come available, they came to us right away and said, hey, do you guys want this space? We have someone interested in this space. If you don't want it, we're going to rent it. And we said, no, we want the space. We're going to take it. And so we were able to take our gym from 3,000 square feet to 5,000 square feet. And then we told them, like, hey, we still want first right of refusal on that next neighboring unit. And we did it again. And we eventually had acquired all 3 neighboring units, and we had 9,000 square feet. And this was very important because our gym was like a goldfish in a fishbowl. It pretty much would get as big as its environment every time, right? Like, and that's because we were really, really good at the sales and marketing stuff, which we'll get to in later parts of this training. So very, very important part is to find a space that you can expand into. Don't underestimate that. because if you do a good job growing your gym, what you'll find is the space will hold you back, and you might have figured out how to grow and scale, but then what you'll find is it doesn't scale evenly. You'll find that everybody wants to go to like 1 or 2 or 3 class hours, peak class hours. And that was the case with our gym, is that we needed to expand in additional spaces. It's not because we were busy at all hours. There were hours of the day where like only one of those spaces we used. Only a third of the gym was getting used. But during peak hours, like after work, 5:30, our 5:30 p.m. class, we could, as many people as we could take in that gym would fill it, right? So we actually ended up using all 10,000 square feet from like 4:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. at our gym. And there were times where we had 3 classes running at once, plus open gym, plus the outdoor alley space behind the gym was getting used. We would have over 100 people at once working out in our gym in the different programs in our space. Given this was an evolution, we didn't do this right away. This is something that happened over the years, but we were grateful that we had the foresight to require a space that was expandable, and that we negotiated with our landlord ahead of time to require first right of refusal. And what's great about that is oftentimes they're underestimating that value to themselves, like, by giving you first right of refusal. If they don't have demand, they're often like, sure, we'll give that to you. And it's a very easy ask, and to have a line there in your lease that says that we get first right of refusal on these units, and have them bullet point the units and the addresses of those units. And the great thing is like, that means it has to run through you. You get to choose who your neighbor is. And if you don't want a neighbor, you can take the space yourself. So I would highly recommend that. Now, you're going to want to consider things like accessibility, right? If you, especially with something like a gym, it's going to need to be accessible. What that means is, more than likely, your city code is going to come by, and they're going to see that, in order to give you a business license, they're going to have to walk through the space. The fire marshal's going to walk through, and they're going to look for things like accessibility. And if you already signed a lease on a space that's not accessible, they're going to require you to make all those changes. And if you didn't negotiate that with your landlord, you're going to be the one to have to pay for them. So you may end up having to spend thousands of dollars to put a ramp in because you don't have accessibility in your space. Every business in most countries, in most states, in most cities these days, you have to have handicap accessibility and accessibility for other types of things. And you're going to want to make sure the space before you sign the lease has accessibility, parking availability. Another thing that will hold back you getting zoning for your business. If, say, you're renting a building that's in a certain zone and you need to get it rezoned for your usage, if you don't have enough parking, the city won't give you that business license, then you might be on the hook for that lease and not be able to even use it. You're also going to want proximity to the target market. Again, where are they driving? If it's not in the middle of a neighborhood where the demographics are good and demand is good, it can also be, like we talked about in our last video, on a main thoroughfare where they're going east or west or north and south by, because that could sometimes be more convenient than actually being in their neighborhood. Sometimes if it's in their neighborhood and it's in the wrong direction from when they turn out of their neighborhood, they just don't want to make a right. They want to make a left. And if it's on the freeway on the way to work or on the way home from work, then that's sometimes easier, just getting off the freeway and pulling into your gym, doing their workout, getting back on the freeway and going to work, or vice versa, going home. You're going to want to assess lease terms and negotiate favorable rental agreements, right? You're always going to want to make sure off the backside of whatever lease you're signing, you have first right of refusal to continue on in the space before someone else is. Because if you don't get that, what the landlord can do is, say they know they're going to increase rents, they might go, and while they have you in the building, knowing that your lease is up in a year, and find another tenant and get that tenant signed into it before they even tell you, because you didn't ask for first right of refusal. So you're going to want first right of refusal, and you're also going to want to try to negotiate rental extensions at the current rate if you can. As we've seen in the last couple of years, rents have gone up astronomically, and the gym owners that signed leases on buildings where they pre-negotiated rental extensions and first right of refusal benefited hugely from that. Because say the rent doubled in your area, but you already have it in the lease that we get first right of refusal at the current rental rate, then the landlord has to honor that. So you can move into additional space at the current rental rate without having to pay the increase in rents in your area. So these are things you want to think creatively about, right? And then you're going to want to ensure the facility meets safety and zoning requirements. That's the biggest thing. Our first gym we opened up as a story I mentioned in the previous video, which we owned. We had a warehouse that we were leasing, and we owned a import-export landscape supply company. And the gym, we opened it up in the corner of that warehouse by building some walls and basically building a space and putting a door on the backside of the building where people could get in to do the gym. And we didn't go through the city. We didn't do zoning. We didn't do any of that stuff. And we got by for about a year and a half before a city official showed up one day in a suit and a tie and with a clipboard in their hands, with a very disgruntled look on his face, asking us what we were doing. and he said, you're not zoned for assembly. And in the city we were in, they called it assembly, and that meant like you couldn't bring people together. You couldn't run a church, or you couldn't run a group fitness class, or you couldn't run some sort of, group thing in this area. This was what he called a heavy industrial zone. And it was true. The area that we were in was like all factories and stuff like that. And he's like, yeah, this can't go down here. And, this being where we were, California at the time, their red tape is very, very thick. There's some cities where you can go and talk to someone at city planning, and they can rezone the area for you, and because they're pro-business, right? They want a small business in the area. But in some markets, in some cities, like they're not pro small business. They're pro, big business, or like they're pro just whatever their red tape is, or they're just pro bureaucracy or whatever the case may be. And where we were at, it was very, very bureaucratic, and it was very, very non pro small business. It was very like big business. And if it was someone with enough money and enough reach and enough influence, they probably could have gotten a rezone, but it wasn't happening for us. So we ended up having to move our entire business in the matter of like a month's time. Otherwise, we were going to lose all of our customers. We had to go find another lease. And luckily at the time, the market was pretty open and lease terms were pretty favorable. If that were going to be right now, that would be, I can only imagine how difficult that would be for a gym right now with how competitive and hard it is to find good rent, right? So that's what you're going to want to do in regards to location and facilities, as well as defining your business model, guys. So you're going to want to get a piece of paper out and go through these things. You're going to want to do this research. You're going to want to make some phone calls. You're going to want to determine all these things before you sign a lease. And this is why I'm doing these videos for you guys, is because I get a lot of gym owners that get on calls, on our sales calls, and they don't even have a gym, and they're not even someone we could sell something to yet. And my goal is to help you guys that are on this journey, so that way down the road when you are ready and you need the things that we do, the marketing stuff, the systems, the strategies, the mentorship, the guidance, you know who to come to. And that's why I'm doing this for you guys, to give you all the mentorship and guidance that you need to open your gym the right way and make the right decisions. That way when we have the space and you have a lease signed and you're ready to get your stuff going, you can go to biglittlegyms.com and get signed up with us. So that's, if that's you, if you are in that space and you are ready to get going, go to biglittlegyms.com. If you don't yet have your gym open, continue to watch. Where you have a whole series of these videos. Go back and watch the older videos. Watch the videos coming out after this. They're going to give you all the information you need to get to that place, right? So do that, and then when you're ready to take the next step, you have your lease in place, your gym's ready to launch, you're ready, you have a grand opening date, you've got a name, you've got a domain name, a website, or not a website, you have a domain name ready to publish a website on, all these other things. Come see us at biglittlegyms.com and we'll get you started. Have a great day, guys. See you soon. Bye-bye.